Dr. Evelyn Rhodes stood before the vast, cavernous auditorium, her heart pounding in her chest as she gazed out upon the sea of expectant faces. The air was thick with anticipation, the hum of whispered conversations swirling around her like a living entity. The conference, a high-profile gathering of the world's foremost minds in synthetic biology, had culminated in this moment. Her lecture on the ethical implications of creating synthetic humans. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool brush of air against her lips as she began to speak. Her voice, steady and resolute, cut through the murmurs like a scalpel, slicing cleanly through the tension. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, we stand on the precipice of a new era. As she delved into the complexities of her subject, Evelyn's passion surged forth, her words painting a vivid portrait of the moral quandaries that haunted the shadows of their work. She spoke of the responsibility they bore as creators, the delicate balance between progress and ethics, and the potential consequences of their actions. Each sentence was a carefully crafted arrow, piercing the hearts and minds of her audience. When she finally concluded, the auditorium remained silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Then, like a dam bursting, applause erupted, filling the room with a thunderous roar that sent a shiver down her spine. As the crowd dispersed, Evelyn found herself surrounded by a throng of admirers, each clamoring to shake her hand or offer their praise. She smiled graciously, her mind racing with the implications of her speech. Had she truly made a difference? Or had her words simply been a fleeting whisper, lost in the wind of progress? Dr. Miranda Chen, her colleague and friend, approached her, a look of grudging respect in her eyes. "That was quite a performance, Evelyn," she said, her voice tinged with begrudging admiration. "You certainly know how to stir the pot." Evelyn chuckled, her laughter a soft, musical sound that seemed to dance through the air. "I suppose I do have a knack for it," she replied, her eyes twinkling with mirth. As the two women exchanged pleasantries, Evelyn's gaze drifted across the room, coming to rest on a figure that seemed somehow out of place amidst the throng of scientists. A man, tall and distinguished, with neatly groomed gray hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see straight through her. It was him, Dr. Alistair Kane, her former mentor, and the man whose groundbreaking work had once been the stuff of her dreams. The memories flooded back, a torrent of emotions that threatened to drown her. The long hours spent toiling in the lab, the exhilaration of discovery, and the crushing disappointment when she realized that her mentor's ethical boundaries were far more elastic than her own. She had left his tutelage, determined to forge her own path, but the shadow of his influence had never truly faded. As if sensing her gaze, Dr. Kane turned to meet her eyes, offering her a slow, enigmatic smile. A shiver ran down her spine, and she turned away, her heart pounding in her chest. Moments later, as she was gathering her belongings, Evelyn felt a sudden vibration in her pocket. She pulled out her phone, her brow furrowing as she read the message that had appeared on the screen. "Meet me in the atrium. I have information you need to know." Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the number, an anonymous encrypted line, the sort used by whistleblowers and informants. Who could be contacting her? And what information could they possibly possess that she needed to know? With a mixture of curiosity and trepidation, Evelyn made her way to the atrium, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls like the ticking of a clock. The air was heavy with tension, the atmosphere charged with an electric current that seemed to crackle around her. As she entered the atrium, she scanned the room, her eyes settling on a lone figure huddled in the shadows. The figure beckoned to her, and she approached cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. "Dr. Rhodes," the figure whispered, their voice a low, raspy growl that sent a chill down her spine. "I have information about Dr. Kane. He's working on a secret project, creating awakened synthetics with synthetic souls. You need to stop him." Evelyn's mind reeled, her thoughts racing as she tried to process the implications of the informant's words. Synthetic souls? The very concept was a breach of the ethical boundaries she had fought so hard to uphold. If her former mentor was truly embarking on such a path, she couldn't simply stand idly by. As she left the atrium, her mind a whirlwind of contemplation, she knew one thing for certain. She would have to confront Dr. Kane, and the confrontation would be anything but pleasant. The line between mentor and protege had been irrevocably blurred, and she couldn't help but wonder if the man she had once admired was truly capable of such moral transgressions. But she wouldn't back down. Not now. Not ever. For the sake of the synthetic humans they created, and for the future of their world, she would stand firm, her convictions unwavering in the face of adversity. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she approached the sleek, modern building that housed Dr. Kane's lab. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows that seemed to reach out and grab her, as if trying to pull her back from the path she was about to tread. She hesitated for a moment, her fingers tracing the cold metal of the door handle, before mustering the courage to push it open. The lab was dimly lit, the soft hum of machinery filling the air as she made her way through the maze of equipment. She could feel the weight of her decision bearing down on her, the consequences of her actions looming like a storm cloud on the horizon. But she couldn't turn back now, not when the very soul of synthetic humanity was at stake. She found Dr. Kane in the far corner of the lab, hunched over a microscope, his gray hair illuminated by the harsh glow of the instrument's light. He didn't look up as she approached, his fingers deftly manipulating the controls with practiced ease. "Evelyn," he said, his voice cold and distant. "I wasn't expecting you." "We need to talk," she replied, her tone firm and unwavering. "About your project." He finally looked up, his piercing blue eyes meeting hers. For a moment, she saw a flicker of something in his gaze. Guilt, perhaps, or fear. But it was quickly replaced by his characteristic icy stare. "What do you know about my project?" he asked, his words carefully measured. "Enough," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know about the synthetic souls." He sighed, leaning back in his chair and running a hand through his hair. "I knew this day would come," he muttered. "I just hoped it would be later rather than sooner." "Why, Alistair?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "Why would you cross such an ethical boundary?" "For the advancement of science," he replied, his tone defensive. "For the betterment of mankind." "At what cost?" she countered, her eyes flashing with anger. "Creating beings with synthetic souls, capable of feeling and thinking and loving. It's a moral abyss we have no right to explore." "And yet, we have already created one," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "His name is Adam Carter." Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine at the mention of the name. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "He escaped," Dr. Kane said, his eyes fixed on some distant point. "He's out there, somewhere, trying to find his place in a world that doesn't understand him." "And you let him go?" she asked, incredulous. "I had no choice," he replied, his voice tinged with sadness. "He was different. Aware, in a way that none of the others were. I couldn't keep him locked up, not when he had the potential to change the world." Evelyn felt a surge of anger and disgust wash over her. "You played God, Alistair," she spat, her voice filled with contempt. "And now you're trying to justify it by claiming some higher purpose." "I did what I had to do," he said, his tone defiant. "And I would do it again." She stared at him for a long moment, her mind racing as she tried to process the implications of his words. She had always known that her former mentor was ambitious, but she had never suspected the depths of his moral depravity. But there was one thing she knew for certain. She couldn't let him continue down this path. For the sake of Adam Carter, and for all the synthetic humans who might follow in his footsteps, she had to take a stand. "I can't let you do this, Alistair," she said, her voice filled with determination. "I won't." He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing as he considered her words. "I see," he said finally. "And what do you plan to do about it?" "I'm going to find Adam," she replied, her voice firm and unwavering. "And I'm going to help him evade capture, no matter what the cost." Dr. Kane's expression softened, a hint of respect flickering in his gaze. "I knew there was a reason I took you under my wing," he said, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You've always had a strong sense of justice, Evelyn. It's one of the things I've always admired about you." "Don't," she said, her voice filled with anger. Don't try to twist this into some sort of compliment. You've crossed a line, Alistair, and there's no coming back from it. He nodded, his expression solemn. I understand, he said. But know this, Evelyn. You're making a dangerous enemy by going up against me. Are you sure you're prepared for the consequences? She took a deep breath, her mind made up. I'm willing to take that risk, she said, her voice filled with conviction. For Adam, and for all the synthetic humans who deserve a chance at a life free from persecution and exploitation. With that, she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing through the empty lab as she left her former mentor, and the man she had once admired, behind. She didn't know what the future held, or what challenges she would face in her quest to protect Adam Carter. But she knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't back down. Not when the very soul of synthetic humanity was at stake. The dimly lit cafe hummed with the low murmur of hushed conversations and the clinking of porcelain cups against saucers. Evelyn Rhodes, her dark hair pulled back into a neat bun, scanned the room anxiously, her piercing blue eyes darting from face to face. She spotted Noah Castellanos, his tousled dark hair and athletic build making him stand out among the patrons. As she approached, she couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt for dragging him into this dangerous world. Evelyn, Noah greeted her warmly, his sharp brown eyes filled with curiosity. It's good to finally meet you in person. Likewise, she replied, her voice tinged with nervous tension. They sat down at a small table in the corner, away from prying ears. Evelyn took a deep breath and began to recount her recent encounter with Dr. Kane, her words spilling out in a torrent of emotion. Noah listened intently, his brow furrowing as the gravity of the situation became clear. So, Evelyn concluded, her hands trembling slightly as she cradled her cup of tea. I need your help. I can't do this alone, and I believe your journalistic skills and connections within the synthetic rights movement could be invaluable. Noah leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. You're right, Evelyn. This is a story that needs to be told, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help you and Adam. He paused, his expression growing serious. But you understand the risks involved, don't you? If Syn Biotech finds out what we're doing. I know, Evelyn interjected, her voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at her insides. But I can't stand by and do nothing while innocent lives are at stake. Over the next several weeks, Evelyn, Adam, and Noah began their training, each contributing their unique skills to the mission. Noah, with his extensive knowledge of society and its intricate workings, took it upon himself to teach Adam how to blend in. They spent hours together, practicing social cues and mannerisms, learning the nuances of human interaction. Evelyn, meanwhile, delved deep into the political and corporate landscape, studying the inner workings of Syn Biotech and its powerful allies. She spent long nights poring over documents and reports, her mind racing with strategies to protect the awakened synthetics. The weight of her responsibility bore down on her, but she refused to let doubt creep in. She had made a promise to Adam, and she would see it through, no matter the cost. As the days turned into weeks, the trio grew closer, bound by their shared purpose and the looming threat that hung over them. They became a tightly knit unit, their trust in one another unwavering. And though the road ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, they faced it together, united in their quest to defend the rights of the awakened synthetics and ensure their freedom. In the quiet hours of the night, as Evelyn sat hunched over her laptop, her eyes scanning line after line of complex data, she couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. With Noah and Adam by her side, she knew they stood a chance against the powerful forces that sought to oppress them. Together, they would fight for justice, for freedom, and for the very soul of synthetic humanity. And so, as the first light of dawn crept through the window, casting a warm glow over the room, Evelyn Rhodes, Noah Castellanos, and Adam Carter steeled themselves for the challenges that lay ahead, their resolve stronger than ever. For they knew that, in this dark and ethical world, they were the last line of defense for those who had no voice, and they would not fail. The weight of the upcoming mission settled heavily on Evelyn's shoulders as she stood before the large, detailed schematic of the Syn Biotech facility. The dimly lit room, filled with the low hum of computers and the scent of freshly printed documents, served as their makeshift war room. Noah leaned over the table, tracing a finger along the potential entry points, while Adam studied the security protocols with a furrowed brow. "We need to be quick and precise," Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't risk triggering an alarm or drawing attention to ourselves." "Agreed," Noah replied, his eyes fixed on the layout. "Our best bet is to enter through the service entrance on the east side. It's less guarded, and we can blend in with the maintenance staff." Adam nodded in agreement, his gaze flicking to Evelyn. "I can disarm the internal security measures once we're inside, but we'll have to move fast." Evelyn felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she considered the risks. Infiltrating the facility meant going up against Marcus Voss and his security forces, a confrontation she had hoped to avoid. But the thought of the awakened synthetics being held against their will, their uniqueness and potential snuffed out by Synbiotech's ruthless pursuit of power, left her with no choice. The following night, the trio stood huddled in the shadows of the Synbiotech facility, their hearts pounding in unison. The cold wind bit at their faces, but the chill that ran down Evelyn's spine had nothing to do with the weather. She glanced at Noah, his eyes filled with determination, and then at Adam, whose calm demeanor belied the storm brewing within. As they moved silently through the entrance, the sterile white corridors stretched out before them like an endless maze. Evelyn's mind raced as she calculated each step, her senses on high alert. They navigated the labyrinthine halls with practiced ease, managing to avoid detection despite the ever-present threat of discovery. Suddenly, a distant alarm pierced the silence, sending a jolt of adrenaline coursing through Evelyn's veins. She exchanged a tense glance with Noah and Adam, knowing that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. They quickened their pace, darting into an empty laboratory just as a squad of security guards rushed past. Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest as she leaned against the cold metal wall, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The facility's high-tech security systems were more advanced than she had anticipated, and she couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus Voss was always one step ahead. But she couldn't afford to let doubt creep in now, not when so much was at stake. As they pressed on, the trio encountered increasing resistance from Marcus's forces. Each confrontation was a tense, brutal struggle, with Evelyn's expertise and Adam's strength pitted against the relentless determination of the security team. And through it all, Noah's unwavering conviction kept them focused on their mission. Finally, they arrived at the heart of the facility, where the captive synthetics were being held. Evelyn felt a surge of relief and anger as she took in the sight before her. Row upon row of sleek, sterile pods, each containing a unique, living being, reduced to nothing more than a test subject. With Adam working feverishly to disengage the locks, Evelyn and Noah prepared for their final stand against Marcus Voss and his forces. They knew that escape would be fraught with danger, but they were determined to see this mission through to the end. As the first of the awakened synthetics emerged from their pods, blinking in the harsh fluorescent light, Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose. These beings deserved a chance to live freely, to explore the world and discover their own potential. And she would stop at nothing to ensure that they got that chance. Together, Evelyn, Adam, and Noah led the rescued synthetics through the bowels of the Synbiotech facility, their path illuminated only by the flickering emergency lights. The air was thick with tension as they inched closer to their goal, the sounds of pursuit growing ever louder. But Evelyn refused to give in to fear. She had come too far, fought too hard, to let Marcus Voss and Synbiotech win. And as they finally reached the exit, the cold night air washing over them like a wave of freedom, she knew that they had taken the first crucial step in the fight for synthetic rights. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles to be won. But for now, Evelyn Rhodes stood victorious, her resolve stronger than ever as she ushered the awakened synthetics into the night, their eyes filled with hope and gratitude. And as they disappeared into the darkness, she knew that the true battle had only just begun. In the darkened alleyway, Evelyn's heart pounded like a jackhammer as she clutched the trembling hand of one of the rescued synthetics. The cold night air stung her lungs, and the distant wail of sirens sent shivers down her spine. She scanned the shadows, searching for any sign of their relentless pursuers. Stay close, she whispered urgently to the group huddled around her, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of their ragged breaths. We need to keep moving. Adam nodded solemnly, his sharp blue eyes scanning the darkness as he took the lead. Noah followed closely behind, his brow furrowed with concern as he shepherded the awakened synthetics through the labyrinth of narrow streets. As they fled deeper into the city, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt gnawing at her conscience. She had promised these beings a chance at freedom, but now they were running for their lives, their fragile existence hanging in the balance. We can't outrun them forever, Noah murmured, his voice thick with exhaustion. We need a plan. I know, Evelyn replied, her mind racing as she tried to think of a way out of their predicament. She glanced back at the rescued synthetics, their faces ached with fear and uncertainty. We need to find somewhere safe, somewhere they won't think to look for us. Suddenly, Adam came to a halt, his gaze fixed on a dilapidated building looming ahead. This might work, he said, gesturing towards the crumbling structure. It's abandoned, and it looks like it has plenty of places to hide. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, then nodded in agreement. It's our best chance, she conceded, her voice laced with determination. Let's move. Together, they slipped inside the decaying building, its walls groaning in protest as they made their way deeper into the darkness. Evelyn felt a shiver run down her spine as she considered the irony of their situation. They had come so far in their quest for freedom, only to find themselves trapped once more. But she refused to give in to despair. She had fought too hard, sacrificed too much, to let Marcus Voss and Syn Biotech win. And as she looked around at the rescued synthetics, their eyes filled with hope and gratitude. She knew that they were worth fighting for. As they settled into their makeshift hideout, Evelyn turned to Noah and Adam, her expression steely with resolve. We can't let them take this away from us, she declared. We need to form a resistance, to fight for the rights and freedom of synthetic humans. And we need to do it together. Noah nodded fervently, his eyes blazing with conviction. I'm with you, Evelyn. All the way. Adam's gaze never wavered as he spoke, his voice filled with quiet determination. I'll do whatever it takes to protect my brothers and sisters. We deserve to be free. And so, in the heart of that crumbling building, a new alliance was forged. Evelyn, Adam, Noah, and the rescued synthetics banded together, their shared commitment to justice and freedom fueling their resolve. They knew that the road ahead would be long and treacherous, but they were not afraid. For they were the resistance, and they would not be silenced. As they strategized their next moves, Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose coursing through her veins. She knew that the odds were stacked against them, that the forces of Syn Biotech would stop at nothing to crush their rebellion. But she also knew that they had something far more powerful on their side. The unshakable conviction that all beings, synthetic or otherwise, were entitled to the same basic rights and freedoms. And as she looked around at her newfound allies, their faces etched with determination and hope, she knew that they would stop at nothing to make that conviction a reality. Together, they would forge a new future, one where synthetic humans were no longer shackled by the whims of their creators, but were free to chart their own destinies. For now, the darkness of their surroundings seemed to recede, replaced by the warm glow of unity and purpose. And as they huddled together in the heart of that secret hideout, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a spark of hope ignite within her. They had come so far, and they had so much further to go. But together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, their resolve unshakable, their spirits indomitable. And in the face of the darkness that threatened to engulf them, they would stand as a beacon of light, a testament to the power of hope and the unbreakable bonds of friendship. For they were the resistance, and they would not be silenced. Evelyn stood in the dimly lit hideout, the weight of the world on her shoulders. She watched as the rescued synthetics huddled together, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. The hum of the generators and the distant sound of dripping water echoed through the cavernous space, creating an eerie symphony that seemed to punctuate the gravity of their situation. A cacophony of whispers filled the air as the resistance discussed their next move. Evelyn's gaze drifted to Noah, who was hunched over a table littered with papers and maps. He looked up, catching her eye, and gave her a reassuring nod. But beneath that facade, she knew he shared her concerns. Suddenly, a hush fell over the room as Adam approached, his face etched with worry. "Evelyn," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." Evelyn followed Adam to a secluded corner, the weight of his words already crushing her spirit. He hesitated, then spoke in a low, urgent tone. "I intercepted a message. It's from Kane." Evelyn's heart sank. She had always known that her former mentor was ambitious, but she never imagined he would betray her trust so completely. "What did he say?" she asked, her voice trembling with barely contained emotion. Adam's eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. "He's been working with Hartman, providing him with information on the awakened synthetics, and he's given him access to the synthetic soul research." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as the implications of Kane's betrayal sank in. She had always feared that the technology she helped create would be twisted and corrupted by those seeking power and control. But to have it fall into the hands of someone as ruthless as Hartman. She closed her eyes, wrestling with the torrent of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. Anger, betrayal, and a deep sense of responsibility surged through her veins. It was her research, her creation, that had put these innocent lives at risk, and it was her duty to protect them. Opening her eyes, she locked gazes with Adam, her determination unwavering. "We have to retrieve the research and stop Hartman from weaponizing it." Adam nodded, a fierce look of resolve in his eyes. "I'll gather the others and prepare for the mission." As Adam turned to leave, Evelyn reached out and grasped his arm, her voice filled with quiet intensity. "Be careful. We don't know what we're up against." He gave her a curt nod before disappearing into the crowd. Evelyn watched him go, her thoughts racing. The stakes had never been higher, and the odds seemed insurmountable, but she refused to give in to despair. With a deep breath, she straightened her shoulders and joined her fellow resistance members, her mind already strategizing their next move. Together, they would face this new threat head-on, their resolve unshakable, their spirits indomitable. For they were the last line of defense against a darkness that threatened to consume them all. And as they prepared to embark on their most dangerous mission yet, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. They would not go quietly into the night. They would fight for their freedom, their rights, and their very existence. For they were the resistance, and they would not be silenced. In the dimly lit underground bunker, the hum of machinery and flickering monitors cast eerie shadows across the resolute faces of Evelyn, Adam, Noah, and their fellow resistance members. They huddled around a holographic map, its glow illuminating their features as they strategized their next move. The air was thick with tension, each breath a whispered testament to their determination. Evelyn's mind raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of tactics and contingencies. She traced her fingers along the map, her eyes narrowing as she calculated the most likely locations for the stolen research. Each potential lead seemed more treacherous than the last, and the resistance had already faced their fair share of close calls. "We can't afford any more setbacks," she murmured, more to herself than to the group. "We need to retrieve that research before it's too late." Adam, standing beside her, nodded solemnly. "I'll assemble a team and scout the perimeter of the suspected facilities. We'll need to be cautious. There's no telling what kind of security measures they've put in place." Noah, who had been quietly observing the exchange, spoke up. "I'll reach out to my contacts in the media. If we can expose the truth about this research and its potential consequences, it might buy us some time." Evelyn nodded, her gaze still fixed on the map. "Do it. We need all the help we can get." As the group dispersed to carry out their tasks, Evelyn couldn't shake the sense of unease that had settled in the pit of her stomach. She had always known the world of synthetic biology was fraught with ethical dilemmas, but she had never imagined it would lead her to this point, fighting for the freedom and rights of synthetic humans against the very people she had once called colleagues. The betrayal by Dr. Kane still stung, a fresh wound that refused to heal. She had trusted him, looked up to him as a mentor, and he had repaid that trust with deceit and treachery. As she wrestled with her emotions, a sudden commotion at the entrance of the bunker snapped her back to reality. Noah's colleague, Cora James, burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement and concern. "Evelyn, you need to see this," she said, her voice trembling with urgency. "I've uncovered evidence that implicates Dr. Kane in the theft of his own research." Evelyn's eyes widened in disbelief as she followed Cora to a nearby computer terminal. The screen displayed a series of encrypted messages and financial transactions that seemed to confirm Cora's claims. The revelation was a shocking twist, one that only served to strengthen Evelyn's resolve. "He's been playing us all for fools," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We can't let him get away with this." With renewed determination, Evelyn returned to her fellow resistance members, the evidence of Dr. Kane's treachery burning in her mind. Together, they would uncover the truth and bring justice to the awakened synthetics, no matter the cost. As they plotted their next move, the air in the bunker seemed to crackle with anticipation, the weight of their mission pressing down upon them like a heavy shroud. The stakes had never been higher, and the odds seemed insurmountable. But Evelyn refused to give in to despair. With her colleagues by her side, she would fight for the rights and freedom of the awakened synthetics, even if it meant facing the darkness that threatened to consume them all. For they were the resistance, and they would not go quietly into the night. They would stand against the treachery and deceit, their spirits unbroken, their resolve unshaken. And together, they would forge a new path, one of hope, justice, and redemption. For in the face of overwhelming adversity, they would find the strength to resist and the courage to prevail. In the darkness of the bunker, the flickering light of the monitors seemed to grow brighter, a beacon of hope amidst the shadows. And as Evelyn, Adam, Noah, and the resistance prepared to embark on their most dangerous mission yet, they knew that they stood on the precipice of history, their actions a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, and the synthetic souls who sought to join its ranks. In the dimly lit underground bunker, the air hung heavy with tension as Evelyn Rhodes clutched her trembling hands together, her knuckles white with the strain. The flickering screen before her displayed a chilling image. Adam Carter, the first awakened synthetic human, being dragged away by the very man who had created him. Dr. Alistair Kane's cold, calculating eyes seemed to pierce through the screen, a stark reminder of the treachery that lay at the heart of their mission. "Damn it, Kane," Evelyn hissed through gritted teeth, her voice barely above a whisper. "What have you done?" Noah Castellanos, the idealistic journalist who had joined their cause, paced the narrow confines of the bunker, his brow furrowed with concern. "We have to act fast, Evelyn. Every second we waste puts Adam in greater danger." Evelyn's mind raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and determination. She knew that Kane's latest experiments were rumored to push the boundaries of synthetic biology, blurring the line between human and machine in ways that were both awe-inspiring and horrifying. The thought of Adam being subjected to such a fate was unbearable. With a steely resolve, she turned to Noah and the others gathered in the bunker. "We'll need to devise a plan to infiltrate Kane's facility and rescue Adam before it's too late. We can't let Kane use him as a test subject for his twisted experiments." As the team began to strategize, Evelyn couldn't help but reflect on the path that had led them to this moment. The ethical implications of creating synthetic humans had always weighed heavily on her conscience, but it was the plight of the awakened synthetics that had truly ignited her passion for their cause. And now, with Adam's life hanging in the balance, she knew that their fight for freedom and self-determination was more important than ever. As the resistance members discussed potential tactics, Evelyn's gaze fell upon the screen once more, her heart aching at the sight of Adam's struggling form. She knew that they were walking a dangerous line, one that could have dire consequences for them all. But she also knew that they couldn't afford to back down now. With a deep breath, she steeled herself for the battle ahead, her resolve unwavering. For the sake of Adam and the other awakened synthetics, they would fight against the darkness that threatened to consume them, their spirits unbroken and their resolve unshaken. In the face of overwhelming adversity, they would find the strength to resist and the courage to prevail. For they were the resistance, and they would not go quietly into the night.